Hello, everybody. This is Jim Gustafson, guitarist of Poobah, and I'm listening to Channel Bizarre. You should too. Guitars rule.
We have a special guest with us today, Jim Gustafson from the band Poobah. Jim's been on the music scene for over 54 years at this point. We're going to talk to Jim today about his musical beginnings and early influences, as well as his unique blend of jazz guitar with a manic sort of what may be described as a very early example of shredding. We've got quite a bit of ground to cover today, so let's get into it, shall we? Hello, Jim. How are you?
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. Maybe we should just jump into it.
Sounds good to me.
Let's go back to the beginning. Where were you from originally, and where do you currently hail from?
I was born in Youngstown, Ohio, and grew up there. And very early, my family moved to Boardman. And then Boardman is right south of Youngstown. And I started playing in bands there when I was 13. When I was 12, my sister was rocking out to the Beatles with her beautiful friends, and I saw them all going nuts, and I knew right then and there, that's the job I should get. So, even though I've had some real jobs, too, because sometimes bands break up, and you got to make some money somehow if you want to not live under a bridge. And then when I was around 30, 32, somewhere around there, one of my relatives passed away, and I inherited their property of 3 acres with a house. And I thought, man, I'm moving out of this apartment and I'm going into my own house. So I was a homeowner at that time. And so I moved to Marietta, Ohio area, and I lived down there for a couple of decades. And then I met this beautiful girl. We fell in love. And I sold my property and moved in with her in West Virginia, and we've been together ever since.
What was the music scene like in Ohio at that point?
Well, when I was growing up, it was just fantastic. I mean, I was right between Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and it wasn't all that far to some other cities, too. Columbus was only 3 hours away at that point, and I mean, it was just Canton and Akron. There was all these towns that I could go and play, and I could go see the most awesome artists who'd come around, whoever the giant artists of the day would play in Cleveland and Pittsburgh and Columbus. And so you had sometimes multiple chances to see whoever it was that you thought was the greatest. I went to a bunch of them, Lord knows. My sister drug me off to some concerts when I was like 13. I saw Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs. I saw the Human Beings. Had that hit record, No, 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 No.
Wow,
no.
Yeah.
And they were from Youngstown, so they played there quite a bit. And I saw Shadows of Night. I saw Cactus. There was a bar in Youngstown used to bring in national acts all the time. And all the ones that weren't huge, if Led Zeppelin came through, they were going to play Cleveland or Pittsburgh. They weren't going to play Youngstown or Canton.
Sure. It's obvious you have a love for music. What are some of your earliest musical memories? Does it go back to childhood or possibly even further?
Well, the first thing I remember is those beautiful girls going crazy over the Beatles. After that, I started listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And my sister brought home records all the time, and I helped wear them out.
Was she your older sister?
Yes. Yes, she was a few years older than me, and great girl, and always giving me advice to try to save me from myself.
Did it help?
Probably some. And my grandmother was such a sweet lady back then, and she saw me banging away when she took me to get guitar lessons, because she saw I wanted to do it. So she was actually glad that I wanted to go take guitar lessons when I was 13, because no one else in our family was playing at the time. Now, my cousin, I found out later, was also taking guitar lessons, but he didn't take it as seriously as I did, and that's why he's a lot richer than me. At any rate, you hear that, George? Well, that was my cousin, but I have a brother named George, too. And he's the one that inspired the, hey, Julie, man, come here.
Oh, yeah.
But getting back to that guitar, after my grandmother took me for those lessons, they had this like $25 guitar was just a piece of crap. But because I spent a month trying to learn everything on that, my grandmother took me out and bought me my first electric guitar, a National. It was shaped like a flag of the United States or a map. It was really something. And a magnetone amp. She got me those two things, and man, I was hooked at that point. And I had that guitar for a while, and then some of my friends told me I needed to get a Fender if I wanted to be able to play like some of the big guys. So I went and I got a Telecaster when I was 14, Fender Telecaster, and that was a great guitar. And then I played that for a couple of years, and then my neighbor, older guy at the time, he had a 1959 Gibson Les Paul Special. It was a beautiful guitar. It was hardly played, and it just sat under his bed. And he saw I was taking it really seriously, so he offered to sell that to me. Now, at the time, nobody knew that those guitars 5 decades later would be worth as much as a down payment on a house. Or you could have got yourself a Mercedes Benz or something for what those guitars have become worth. And he let me have it for $250, which sounds so cheap.
Insane. For
a Les Paul, especially a classic one. Yeah. But you remember, this was, 1967 or something. And he told me I had to give him my Fender Telecaster, which I only paid $90 for when I was 14. And now they're like, a nice one's $1,500. And that Les Paul, like that, you can buy one now for a couple grand. Mm-hmm. But the classic ones are ones that are worth $30,000, $40,000. I've had a lot of great guitars, probably about 30 different ones.
Yeah.
And no, I don't have all those because, I don't know, like obsessive, I keep changing every couple of years.
So you tend to move on to another guitar and actually get rid of your prior guitar for something newer?
Well, I don't get rid of them anymore, but I only have about 10 of them now. The ones I got are fabulous.
Yeah, and that brings me to brands. You're obviously not loyal to any one brand. You switch your brands up. I've seen you play Carvin. I've seen you play Jackson. Do you like the ability to switch up?
Yeah, because I like to keep getting different sounds. After making so many recording sessions, hundreds, a lot of artists only do maybe 10 songs or 50 songs. Well, I've done like 300. Yes, I do have my own studio, but I also like to go to an analog studio with 2-inch tape. It's only about 2 hours from my house. I like to go there and get that great sound I get off that. I mean, I'm not knocking digital. I'm just saying that analog sound transferred to digital sounds pretty damn sweet to me. And I've recorded hundreds of songs at that one studio. And I've just finished 11 more songs for a brand new Poobah album for 2020.
Is the studio completely analog?
No, it's computerized too.
Okay. You tend to want to use the analog component.
Well, I'm not picky, but it does sound great.
Your recording process when using tape, do you still go about it as an old school thought would be? One take, or we have to rewind the tape and do it again, or is splicing an okay thing?
We take it as many times as it takes to get it right. We usually rehearse the songs really well, so we often get it in the first few takes because we've rehearsed the shit out of it. If you just learn the song in the studio, sometimes it takes 4 or 5 takes before you can get it, and sometimes more, but not very often. Yeah. There was a session where we did take it about 20 times, and it just sucked, so we just trashed that song. And somehow, I now have like almost 20 albums recorded, and I have, the new one, Evolver, will be the 15th release, and then I have like 4 more in the can, meaning they haven't been released yet, but they're already recorded.
So we're hopefully going to hear those 4 unreleased albums at some point, which brings me to my next subject. Starting kind of at the beginning, I'm sure there's a beginning before Poobah. Let Me In was released around 1972, if I'm correct.
Yes,
and that was generally considered to be your first full-length released LP. Is that actually the case?
It's my second album. because I made an album about 10 months before that with Jimi Hendrix's bass player, Billy Cox, in Memphis, Tennessee. He produced an album I made there that the record label went under, and they never did release it, but I do have a copy of it.
And what should we expect to hear on that album?
It's old school rock with a bluesy female singer as the lead vocalist, and there's some keyboards and guitar on it.
And how was that experience working with Billy Cox?
I just couldn't even believe my luck. It's just like, how could this be happening? I just watched him on the Woodstock movie a week earlier. I had no idea he was going to be there at the studio. So we drive from Youngstown to Memphis. Good long ride. I think it took 13 hours or something. And we get there, and I walk in the studio, and I look over, and there's Billy Cox sitting there by the mixing console.
Oh, my God.
And I'm just shocked. And I walked in, and I says, "You're Billy Cox, right? I just saw you in that movie, Woodstock." And he goes, "Oh, thank you, son," or something. And I says, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he says, "Your record label has hired me to produce your album." Yeah, and he had some great ideas about recording and stuff, which really helped me to add all that. Everything I learned from him I used on the next couple of Poobah albums, for sure. Because I paid attention to that guy, because I felt like I was in the presence of greatness, and I wanted to absorb his aura of music fabulousness. And we're still friends to this day. I just saw him back in April. He gave me backstage passes to that Experience Hendrix.
And the only original member from the Hendrix Experience lineup still living.
Yes, he is the last gypsy standing. And I remember getting that Band of Gypsies album and thinking them guys were from outer space or something. When I heard that Foxy Lady, and I thought, man, this guy's some kind of alien. He's landed on Earth.
Oh,
Nobody sounds like that.
You know, Jim, you've played with the likes of Alice Cooper, Cheech and Chong, Ted Nugent, Uriah Heep. Do you have any standout moments from that era?
Well, one thing, when I played with Uriah Heep, we went over great. I was just like nervous that, because I've seen some good bands open for some national acts and get cups and lighters and pennies thrown at them and stuff when they were sounding good. So, you never know when that's going to happen to you. I saw Stone Temple Pilots get pelted when they opened for Megadeth. I saw a good band from Cleveland get pelted when they opened for Alice Cooper, and I just couldn't believe people would be so damn mean. But they wanted their Alice Cooper on the stage, I guess. When I played with Judas Priest, after the show, the Judas Priest road manager walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, pretty good set, young man." And I said, "Well, thank you." He goes, "I'll tell you something," in his English accent. He goes, "Most of the bands that open for us get pelted." He goes, "So that means you did really good." Because nobody threw anything. I did, however, have one guy in the front row that after we got done playing Golden Ring, he seemed like, "Wow, yeah, all right, that's pretty cool." And then we played another song, and he yelled, "First!" I knew that was going to happen. It happens. It's the first time I've seen it happen to other great bands. If someone is there to see Jethro Tull, I don't give a shit how good your band is. If you're opening for them, somebody's going to say, "Get off the stage and let them on."
Absolutely.
I played with some bands I thought were just, must have never practiced and never bothered doing anything except for drugs. But yet there'd still be somebody in the audience going, "You are the best." And I'm not going to name any bands, but I've played with some bands that had major record deals. They had a terrible live act. And then others that surprised the shit out of me. And Frank Marino was one of those. I didn't know what to expect when I went to see him. I'd heard some of the mean press, "Oh, he's just a Hendrix wannabe," and stuff, that bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And he sounded like Hendrix all right if Hendrix was on speed. Because he had Hendrix's sound with a 90-mile-an-hour guitar. I mean, he was terrifically acrobat on the guitar and had good songs. You know, he had the right amount of bluesiness. He had to me, just because you can play fast doesn't mean it sounds good with the song. And I've heard some people just destroy songs trying to impress, but it got to the point where it was just them wanking and the song was suffering.
Right.
And I've probably done it once or twice myself.
I believe Frank Zappa referred to it as noodling.
Well, you know, sometimes that's a way people dismiss anybody that's better than them. You know, I mean, I hate to say it, but I've been to open mics where somebody was playing really great and somebody next to me was going, "You suck." I went to an open mic once and I said, I'm going to play Steamroller. And I rehearsed it with this drummer and bass player, and we're about ready to play it. And I said, "This is a song off the third Poobah album." He goes, "Oh, the third album? Oh, yeah, sure. Lying asshole." And I can remember after my set, me being heckled by him, I can remember the guy that was putting on the open mic coming over and saying, "He's not lying." He has his albums out, and the guy still wasn't nice to me. He just wanted to be a hater. I guess that happens in any business. I don't care if you're selling earwax. There's going to be somebody who wants to not like you.
Jim, your second or third, technically your third album, was U.S. Rock, released in '76. Now, I believe you were touring partially or most of the time during this time. Was that album written partially on tour or mostly on tour, or a combination of the two?
I wrote some of it in motel rooms, and I wrote a lot of it at home. I can remember that we needed one more song for the album, and I just went in the other room, and in 15 minutes I had that right out of the night, and we just recorded it. I just showed it to him. There we went. Some songs really come to you really quickly, and sometimes those are really good ones that they just plop out, and someone's standing going, "Hey, what's that?"
How did you enjoy the recording process on that album? And did you use basically the same system that you used with the Billy Cox era? Did you pull some of his goodness over into your recordings? And
I feel that I took info that I learned from him about sounds and adding these parts or those parts and changing this or not doing something, because there's also the art of not doing stuff. And when I got to Youngstown to make Let Me In and U.S. Rock, the engineer there was really a well-qualified guy who'd really done a lot of recording. I mean, he was a very experienced engineer. He'd been the engineer over at Wham Studios, where I'd made a 45 with Days Ends and made a 45 with Biggie Rat. And then, so by the time I was 21, they had a new studio that was way better than the other one. I made 3 albums there, and then I made another album in Cincinnati. And then I made an album in my living room with my dad got me like a really expensive sound on sound, reel to reel, and I started making songs on that. Of course, you didn't have the flexibility that you had with a 16-track or 24-track studio.
Are those songs on an album, on a released album?
Yeah, matter of fact, they're on Let Me In.
The home recording.
Reissue with the second album. It's kind of hard. Everybody thinks that's the first album. Let Me In's actually the second album.
Yeah.
Biggie Rat was my first album. Let Me In was my second album, and then the bonus album on the reissue of Let Me In that has 2 record set, that album was made in '73. And then the band broke up, and I just shelved the tapes and started on another one. And then I made another album in '74, and that band broke up, and I shelved those tapes. Well, some of these have come to light now on this album, and the other ones are going to come to light on a future album. So actually, U.S. Rock is really my 4th album. And Steamer was actually my 5th, but it's just that the public only saw Let Me In, U.S. Rock, and Steamroller thinking those are the first three albums.
Yes.
Because
and,
technically they are, because they were pressed into records.
At which point, it brings us to 1979. The album was Steamroller. In my opinion, arguably your best early album. What was that lineup? Where was it recorded? And do you have any standout memories from that recording process?
Well, that album was also recorded at Peppermint Studios with Gary Ramey as engineer. The same guy who did Let Me In and US Rock. We really rehearsed those songs. I paid for 95% of that album myself. Wanted to make sure I got bang for buck, so we rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed until we could stop on a dime. And I managed to find an excellent drummer, Judge Gaylord. He was very young at the time, and I think he was like 6 years younger than me, or 7 years, it doesn't matter, but I was glad to find such a good drummer at the time when I wanted to make that record. And Phil was still on board with Poobah. He'd been out of the band for a year. He got fed up with the traveling and not making it big. Yeah, because every band wants to make it big.
Would you like to tell everybody the Phil you're talking about?
Oh, Phil Jones from Youngstown, Ohio. Not the Phil Jones that makes the bass amps. And I've never met him, but he's got a good name. Anyway, Phil was a terrific bass player. He played in a jazz band before he played in my band, but he wanted to play rock, not jazz. He had very creative ideas about making my songs shine.
You know, that album has, in my opinion, a very different sound than your earlier albums. It almost has a very metal edge to it. How was that received compared to your earlier LPs, being such a departure?
I've had so many people tell me that that's one of their favorite albums. I enjoyed making it, all those songs. I enjoyed the recording. I loved it when I played the song back on the recording studio monitors and heard the way it sounded. I was just like, damn, we got something here. And if it's not going to probably play on the radio. It definitely wasn't radio-friendly 3-minute fodder. It was about as heavy as you got in those days. Well, I wrote most of it, but Judd had a few good ideas. Like, he'd come up with a drum part for, like, You Don't Love Me, and then I just came up with the lyrics and a chorus and everything to go along with it. And then Phil, he didn't ask for any credit, but I gave him credit because he suggested one note in a song. So even though his name's on the song with me, I did 98% of the song, and he did 2% by saying, right here in this song, let's play a D instead of an A or something. But as that band was only together for about 7 months before our terrific drummer announced he was joining some cover band. And
what a shame. Such a solid lineup. Jim, you have a considerable discography. We obviously could dedicate an entirely separate interview to it. I believe we'll actually be diving deeper into that discography as a separate video.
Okay.
But moving on from there for a moment, I've seen some random videos and clips on YouTube from Poobah in past years and up to relatively current. Do you have any plans to do a live DVD or possibly a show gig that could be recorded on, say, a higher definition medium?
I've been meaning to. It's just that I've been so caught up in so many things that sometimes you forget to invite someone there to tape it. I mean, there's been some amazing gigs with a fantastic audience response, and I wish that I had to put on YouTube, and that was the night I forgot to ask anybody to come and film.
Oh, no.
And then you invite a guy to film, and you come in, and that's the night where there's a snowstorm and 20 people show up. I remember going to see Mahogany Rush in a snowstorm, and I got there, and there was like 20 people there, and Mahogany Rush's road manager comes over. He's walking to the bar, and I says, are they going to play? And he goes, no, they decided to just hanging up tonight. It's too terrible. Nobody's going to come out tonight. And I said, yeah, I was insane for driving here tonight. It really was dangerous. It was like a foot of snow. And about 2 weeks later, Rick Derringer played the same place. And I went, and it snowed 2 feet that night.
Oh.
And there was probably about 20 people there in a place that held 200, you know. But it wasn't his fault. They were on the TV going, don't go out tonight. It's bound to take your life.
Jim, your vocal style is different, to say the least. Where did this style derive from? Was that basically honed or realized by your early musical influences?
Well, you know, most people are born with a certain range. I think by the time I was 14 or 15, I realized that I could sing really high or low. And I went to church all the time, and I sang in the choir for years. And then I went to Dana School of Music and took vocal for a year, which was actually opera. But after a year that I went on tour and I dropped out. I didn't really want to become an opera singer. I really just wanted to learn how to sing better. And at the same time, I took classical guitar lessons at Dana School of Music, too, and I also dropped out of that and went to On the Road. I also studied accounting for about 6 months.
Jim, would you consider that a type of falsetto?
Yeah, there is in there, and if you can learn to work it and control it and not be shrill and how to control your pitch, you can really use that to really bang out some great rock and roll.
Absolutely. Jim, your picking style is interesting. What were some of your early musical influences, and did they help to create that style?
Well, I saw some really great guitar players that lived within a 100-mile radius of me, Joe Walsh and Phil Kagi, some other guys. There was a guy named Tony Palkovic who was a hell of a guitar player. And they were pretty quick and stuff, and I studied them. I'd go out and I probably watched Phil Kagi a dozen times. I'd sit there and I would just, young Jim, young 14-year-old Jim standing there just absorbing it all. And I'd go and I'd see the human beings, and I'd sit there and I'd absorb him. I'd go see Joe Walsh, and I'd absorb his playing. And then someone turned me on to the Mahavishnu Orchestra in Chick Corea. And honestly, whatever girlfriend I had at the time would hate that music and tell me to take it off. I guess it was musicians' music. You know what I mean?
It absolutely is.
Oh, I'm sure there's lots of people who aren't musicians that really dig it if they give it a chance. It's just that sometimes if music doesn't have any lyrics and words, people don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. That's why you hired Billy Cobham as your drummer.
Yeah.
He's your vocalist.
I saw him on one of his solo shows where he had John Scofield on guitar, Alphonso Johnson, and George Duke.
Wow.
They had a real good band.
God, I love George Duke. I miss him.
But the audience really wasn't very responsive. It was kind of like, where's the singer?
Their loss. They don't know what they missed.
And Frank Zappa says it's noodling. I love Frank Zappa, too. I think he's genius. I think that Chick Corea was a genius, and I really liked the different guitar players he had, that Bill Connors and Al Di Meola. Them guys were sensational guitarists. And I think those guys led me to check out other people. So I started going in the record store and asking the guy, who do you have that's like this, and who do you have like this? And he'd end up showing me people like Les Paul and the Adventures and stuff. God, I thought they were great.
Sure.
And they were more melodic rather than showing off, Because when I went and I saw Chick Corea live, my old manager put on that concert in Pittsburgh, so I got in free, and I went there, and that L.T. Meola, man, he was something to behold at that time. A young guitarist, quicker than lightning. So So after listening to these jazz records and all these rock records, because I loved Black Sabbath, and I loved Led Zeppelin, and I loved the Beatles, and I loved AC/DC and Aerosmith, and after I kind of like tried to fuse what I liked about jazz and bring it into rock and still make it palatable for the girls, which is really hard to please everybody. Oh my God, it's a hard thing to do. You know, you might think you recorded the greatest rock song ever, and then you play it for somebody, and they're like, "You got any Journey?"
Oh.
Hey, you got to have thick skin to be in the music business, because you might have 10 people in a row tell you that they love your album, and the next one says, "Why?" I don't even remember what the question was now.
It was about your picking style, how it was derived and modified and honed.
And then a lot of practice. I really woodshed it a lot. My God, I have rehearsed so much that I've broken up marriages. I'm joking about that. But
Jim, you've had quite a few albums released on vinyl. Are you a fan or a collector of vinyl?
I'm not a crazy collector that sells my car to buy an album or something.
Let's talk about your latest album, Evolver.
Well, Evolver, I've got 11 tracks done now in the last year. Yes, we're now on all the jukeboxes in the United States, so any bar or restaurant or place that has a jukebox, if you go in there, on all the internet jukeboxes, Poobah is on them. And I was in one the other night, and there was 89 Poobah songs on that jukebox.
Excellent bar music.
And I have a friend, Ted, from Chicago, who keeps sending me pictures of the clubs he goes into with Poobah on the jukebox and him playing it. I was down near Athens, Ohio, and went in there, was playing Poobah on the jukebox at my boy's restaurant. And I was at a restaurant here in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and I was playing Poobah in the restaurant where everybody's sitting there wondering who that was.
Oh, no. So mean.
Well, there was a couple people there that were bobbing their heads and stuff, so I knew they did something good. We got a comedy song that we put out recently called Somebody Stole My Weed. I got a video of it, too, on YouTube.
That's an actual real video with actor.
Yeah, yes. The guy who did a remake of White Zombie, the director, Arthur, he had some great ideas about that, making that video. And Mark Colombo was the producer, and he put out a movie, too, that was, I don't know where it's available, if you can get it right now, but it was called Resistance. Those two did a great job on that, Somebody Stole My Weed. Now there's another version of that song on YouTube, which is a studio version, which is on the Poobah album Blue, which is like 70 minutes long.
Okay. Is that on your webpage?
Yes. Anybody wants to get a copy of Blue or Underground or Peace Farmers or Furious Love or Wizard of Psych.
Maybe we could talk about Underground for a moment, Jim.
Okay.
You have a video out for that, that's self-titled, for the album. That album is a bit of a standout from comparable ones on either side. Was there something different going on at that point?
I just gotten that new Carvin Alan Holdsworth guitar, and I was really feeling inspired at that time. And plus, I don't know, they just... I really felt like I had some good music, but we were underground. We were, usually the radio won't play anybody that's over 25 years old. So I figured we're going to be stuck being underground as soon as you're over 25. It amazes me that they came out with classic rock radio so that all the guys that were over 30 could still get some kind of airplay.
Jim, is there anything that I have missed that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I would say that if there's any young people out there thinking about playing in a band and stuff, I would say the best way to get anywhere is to have a job where you have income and, make your records and stuff in your local studio or your house with whatever you got, and then you'll have some kind of way to finance it to get it out on vinyl and CDs and stuff. And, go with the thought that doing it for fun, because almost everything that's a hit was an accident. just a lot of times just being in the right place at the right time, and you may not have any control over where it's going to go. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. Every pop star had to dream big too. It's just that you have to get with those corporations that can get you on the radio, because they own the radio. A lot of times, an up-and-coming band has a pretty tough time getting in that position. It's really luck and who you know. And I can think of some things I did that I should have done differently, like when the guy told me that it's sold out of my records again and that I ought to go to New York City and tell somebody. And instead, we laid around and partied.
So stick to your guns, woodshed, and spend your time getting better.
Right. And think about trying to make songs that people will relate to. You know, don't make everything depressing. Don't make everything happy. You got to find a spot. And also, there's just so much luck involved in what will ever happen with your stuff. But if you at least get it done, you know, if you wait all your life thinking that you're going to sign with a record label so you can make an album, they're going to want to hear something from you before they invest thousands of dollars in you.
Good point.
So you got to come up with a pretty damn nice recording to convince somebody to take your band. People get dropped so quickly in this business. I mean,
Jim, why don't you tell us again where you're playing, where we can find your albums and music?
All the dates are listed at poobahband.com. Just go there, and they're listed right there, and they're easy to see. And there's some free songs on there to hear us. And there's lots of photos, hundreds of Poobah photos on there that people can check out. And anybody that wants to order can also order from poobahband.com.
That's poobahband.com. That's
right.
Poobah
And if they
Band.
go to the contact there, they'll send the message to me. So if they want to talk to me, just send the message to there, and they'll send it to me. And if they want to talk about Poobah, or they want to talk about hiring us for a live concert, that's what to do. Just go to poobahband.com and hit contact.
Almost anything you need, go to poobahband.com and ask Jim.
That's right.
Poobahband.com, Poobah Band on Facebook. Jim, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'd like to thank you for taking the time out.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Good talking to you. Bye.